I do some consulting work on American
feeling in the room was
You don't ever say to her that
One about the Chautauqua Institute.
Introductory discussion on the ethical
We left.
more of a community.
Before China took back over.
currently doing in autism.
Why can it be so difficult to get kids to behave? Tonight's guest has the answer to that question, along with advice on how you can rediscover the joy of parenting. Amy McCready is the founder of Positive Parenting Solutions and author of If I Have to Tell You One More Time, the revolutionary program that gets your kids to listen without nagging, reminding, or yelling. In her most important role, she plays mom to 2 teenage boys. We'll talk with her about her book and her nag and yell-free program for correcting your children's bad behavior. Here's our conversation with Amy McCready. Amy McCready, welcome to the conversation.
Thank you for having me.
You have literally reached tens of thousands of parents through your Positive Parenting Solutions program. You just wrote a book, which we'll talk about a little bit later. You're a frequent guest on a number of daytime talk shows. I'm wondering, how did a Penn State finance major become a parenting expert?
Who would have thought, right? Well, it almost happened out of necessity. You know, when I graduated from Penn State, thanks to the Penn State Placement Service, I got a great job with a Fortune 500 company. And most of my business experience was in training and development, writing and delivering training programs. And then fast forward many years, I'd been working and traveling everywhere. And then all of a sudden I was a mom with 2 toddlers, and I felt completely incapable. You know, I had managed
this very capable woman.
Well, supposedly, I had managed large groups of people, and that all felt very comfortable to me. But taking care of 2 toddlers was completely foreign, and so I started, studying positive discipline strategies, and I just found it so empowering because when I started using those strategies with my kids, guess what? They started behaving better. And I always refer to myself as a recovering yeller because I did a lot of yelling. And I knew that wasn't good for me and it wasn't good for them. So I took my business background that I'd learned in these great Fortune 500 companies and put it with these fabulous principles of positive discipline that I just loved and started a business. So without that Penn State finance education, I might not have been equipped to start a business and make a go of it on my own.
And you actually did seek individual expert advice.
Absolutely, yes.
Which you say is weird, that most of us were willing to dole out money for our son to get batting coaching or
That's
for us to
right.
take golf lessons, but you say we're hard pressed to part with our money for expert parenting advice, which is one of the most critical things we do.
That's right. So for the job that is the most important thing we'll probably ever do, we receive basically no training. So you go through maybe a 6-week Lamaze class, but after that you're on your own. My son is 16 and he has a part-time job, and he had more training to work at a fast food counter than I did to do the most important job of my life. And so that's sort of a perception that I'm trying to help change, because it is worth getting parenting advice, whether you do it, locally at a free service or whatever, but it's a difficult job and it doesn't come intuitively.
No, you said you used to be a yeller.
Yes.
And the New York Times announced yelling is the new spanking.
Yes. Yes.
It's not any more effective than spanking.
No, it's not. And that article just went viral. People went crazy over that article. But it's true. A lot of parents recognize that spanking isn't all that helpful and it's not that effective, and they made the decision that they don't want to do it, but what are they left to do instead? And so they fall into this pattern, as I did, of nagging and reminding and eventually yelling. And they figure, well, at least if I yell, I'll be heard. And it gives you that momentary feeling of, oh, well, at least I got that off my chest. But frankly, it doesn't work all that well. And so the cycle keeps repeating. So the goal is to give parents really practical, easy to implement strategies so they don't have to do all the nagging and reminding and yelling.
Well, the interesting thing about yelling is that something like 88% of those who were polled admit that they do it. So a lot of us are yellers. But it's one of the most guilt-inducing behaviors that parents have.
Absolutely. And I've never met a parent who feels good about the fact that they yelled at their kids, but it happens because we're so frustrated. It's sort of a, a last resort measure. And then afterwards you feel guilty and you think you're the worst mom or dad in the world. But then the whole cycle starts again. So again, giving them some more practical tools that actually work. Nobody wants to yell, but they don't know what to do instead.
Well, one of the things you say is share the power. And lots of parents think, if I give my child more power, then I am losing some authority. And you say it's the exact opposite.
Exactly, because we are all hardwired with the need for power or autonomy. So that need for autonomy and independence is just the way that we're all wired, whether you're an infant, a toddler, a teenager, or a senior citizen. We're all that way. But when you're a kid, you don't feel like you have a lot of power because they have people like us who are calling the shots. We decide what they'll wear, what they'll eat, when they'll go here and there. But as you said, by sharing that power, giving the child more opportunity to make decisions, to have some control over his own life, age appropriately, of course, that fills up that hardwired need for power, and then they're less likely to fight us for power.
So for a small child, you insist that they're going to brush their teeth, but the choice may be, do you want to use an electric toothbrush or your Little Mermaid toothbrush?
Exactly. Do you want to put the toothpaste on or do you want me to? It's simple choices. And, I always like parents to remember the equation. Decisions equal power. Anytime you have an opportunity to make a decision, you have some say over what happens in your life, whether it's something really silly like the toothbrush or what towel you're going to use or what you're going to wear that day, every time they make a decision, they get a little hit of power. And so the more that you can incorporate that into your child's day, that fills up their power basket and again makes them less likely to fight you with negative power. They're going to get their power one way or another. It's sort of our choice in how that happens. If we don't give it to them in legitimate ways, we proactively fill their power basket, we're going to pay for it with the power struggles.
Now, a lot of what's in your book, if I have to tell you one more time, the revolutionary program that gets your kids to listen without nagging, yelling, or reminding, it's based on something called Adlerian psychology, which fascinates me for a couple of reasons. One is that this is a guy whose ideas are 100 years old.
That's right. That's right. But when you go back and study it, again, it's based on those foundation principles of that hardwired need for power, that hardwired need for emotional connection. Alfred Adler referred to belonging and significance. We all have the need to belong and be part of a group. When we're young, it's our family, that's our community. But the same principle applies in the classroom, in a community organization to which you belong. We all have the need to belong, and we all have the need to feel significant, to feel like we have some control, some power. We make a difference in the world. And those are just hardwired needs. And if we foster on strategies that meet those needs, then the behavior stuff kind of takes care of itself.
And then this whole idea of mutual respect.
Yes.
And I guess what I find especially interesting is that we will yell at our kids, but we wouldn't dream of yelling at a coworker, even though our relationship with that coworker is so much more superficial than perhaps than the relationship we have with our child.
Absolutely, yeah, and we tend to respond to our children and our spouses or significant others probably in more negative ways. We yell, we get annoyed, we get frustrated, but we would never do that with our coworkers. So you're right. We have to really watch those responses. And you talked about mutual respect. Parents get so annoyed when kids speak to them in a disrespectful manner. They demand to be respected. Well, you can't demand respect. Actually, you can short term. It's just not a sustainable solution, but you have to earn that respect. So if you speak to them in a respectful way, we still hold them accountable and all of those good things, but that respect is shared, and they will respond and treat you in a respectful way.
I saw on Facebook where your mother said, "I wish I had had your book when I was when I was raising my 3 kids," meaning you and your brother and your sister. What was the parenting style in your household, and to what extent do most of us adopt what we grew up with?
It's so funny. I think we either, adopt it or go the total opposite direction. I would say, I have very loving parents, and I think all parents do the best that they possibly can. Looking back, I would say that our upbringing was more on the permissive side, not a lot of rules and limits and consequences. So I tend to gravitate towards, more rules and consequences and limits. And when you look at parenting styles. You know, you have the very permissive on one end of the spectrum, and you have the very strict on the other end.
Authoritarian.
Yes, and neither one is really the best. You know, what we're striving for, and what positive discipline principles assert, is that you want to be in the middle. You want to give enough freedom, but within limits, kindness with firmness, and so that's the goal for parents. But of course, we all draw on, you know, what we grew up with, and we try to follow that or go the total opposite direction.
Now, tell us where your book fits in, because our generation grew up, I guess our parents grew up looking at Benjamin Spock's book on raising children. And I remember when I had children, it was Terry Brazelton. Now comes along your book. There's also Susan Stifelman and Jane Nelson and a number of other new child care experts. Where does yours fit in, and how do you want people to use it?
I would say my book is more similar to the Jane Nelson series. You know, Jane Nelson was sort of the mother of the positive discipline movement, also based on Adlerian psychology. And the way I would like for parents to use it is, think of it almost like a recipe book. It's almost like a step-by-step strategy where recognize that there's no quick fixes, there's no magic bullets. But if you start at the beginning, and you start with some of the key strategies in the book, like mind, body, and soul time, which is, you know, filling that emotional connection and filling that power basket. If we start with the root cause of the behavior, the other stuff kind of takes care of itself.
Now, I want to pick up on that mind, body, and soul time, because I think it's a fantastic tip. You say give 10 minutes of pure mind, body, and soul time, real individual attention to your child, each child.
Yes.
If you have 3, that's 30 minutes every day. Why is that so important, this undivided attention? And I don't think many of us do it.
Well, remember that attention basket that I said we're just all hardwired with, and that belonging and significance. Those are our core emotional needs. And one of the best ways to meet those needs is by spending that one-on-one time and attention with your child. And again, it doesn't have to be a long time sitting down to play a game of Monopoly. It's small hits, 10 minutes once a day, where you are totally present in mind, body, and soul. So you ignore the BlackBerry chirping, you let the phone go to voicemail. And the reason that's so important is that it fills their attention basket, but it also sends the message that there is nothing more important in these 10 minutes than the time that I'm spending with you. And that is a huge sense of significance, a big hit of significance for the child. And so much, think about sibling rivalry and fighting. So much of that is about fighting and competing for the parent's attention. When you start doing mind, body, and soul time, you'll be amazed that a lot of that competition goes away.
And in fact, we can't eliminate misbehavior if we don't know why our kids are misbehaving. And that's really what your book is all about, figuring out why. They're doing it for one of two reasons. They want attention.
Or the power, absolutely. And you're right, because so often we tend to put these Band-Aid solutions. We do a timeout, but that's not getting to the root of the real issue. When we get to the root of the issue, a couple of things happen. First, we can sort of, deal with that behavior in the moment, but where we want to get to is to the point where we're preventing it from happening in the future. And by doing that, by getting to the root cause and understanding that, misbehavior is not random, it is happening for a reason. And if we could think about the child when they're misbehaving, like they're wearing a big sign that says, you know what, Mom and Dad, I want to belong, I want to feel significant, I just don't know how to do it. And so I'm just going about these annoying attention-seeking behaviors, and I'm fighting you for power every chance I get to try to send that message to you.
And of course, if you don't pick up on this neon sign, which is their bad behavior, that whole cycle of yelling and just continues.
It absolutely does.
Now, you mentioned timeout just a moment ago,
yes.
And there are two schools of thought on that. The National Association for the Education of Young Children says timeout is not a good idea. The American Academy of Pediatrics says it is a good idea.
Well, I think, particularly when you look at the Association of Pediatrics, they talk about it compared to spanking. So certainly that's a desirable option with spanking. But I think timeout can create more power struggles in the end. When we force the child to go to their room or go to the corner or the naughty chair for a prescribed period of time to think about their behavior, what is the point of that, really? Are they sitting in timeout thinking, I made a poor choice here. If I could do this over again, what would I do differently? Of course not. They're just stewing. And so for a lot of parents, they'll say, this just creates more of a power struggle. They'll say, should I hold the door shut, Amy, while they're in timeout? Well, if you have to hold the door shut to keep them in timeout, that's a big power struggle. Now, that is different than saying, we all need to take a chill out break here. Let's both sort of
I'll go to my room, you go to your room.
Yeah, let's calm our bodies down, and whenever you're ready to come back and talk and we can work this out, let's do that. That's a different situation, and that's what happens often in the classroom. The child is asked to leave the activity. When you're ready to come back and join us and be calm, feel free to do it. But the child makes the decision when they come back. It's not the parent saying, you go there for 10 minutes and don't come out until you've thought about your behavior.
Well, you mentioned the naughty chair, and anyone who watches television has probably seen Super Nanny.
Yes.
And Jo Frost, who's the host of that program, she often sends or advises parents to send their children to the naughty chair or the naughty step, I guess, in the house. How valid do you think the advice that parents are getting from Super Nanny and Nanny 411, how valid is it?
I think there are elements of it that are great, and she is such a colorful character. You can't help but love her. But I do disagree with the naughty chair and the naughty step. First off, the name is, I just really disagree with the name. Naughty chair. I'm labeling you as naughty. So that
self-fulfilling prophecy?
That's right.
Okay.
It's so discouraging. It is so discouraging. And then there's a clip that I show to parents in classes, which is from the Super Nanny, and where she puts the child in the naughty chair because he's misbehaved. Well, no sooner does she turn around and that child is up out of the naughty chair running around the house. And so Super Nanny or mom have to drag the child back to the naughty chair, sit him down, explain why he's there again, adds another minute. She walks away. This thing happens again and again. And in this clip, after I think it's 56 minutes of this nonsense going on, the nanny says, well, that really worked now, didn't it? And I'm thinking, no parent in their right mind is going to go through 56 minutes of chasing the child in and out of the naughty chair. It's just creating a power struggle. So there are just so many better strategies than that. So,
speaking of strategies, you say it's important, and some people may look at this as semantics, that family members have chores, but you don't call them chores. You call them family contributions.
Yes.
Why is that important? And what's the distinction between the two?
I do like to call them family contributions rather than chores, because chores just sends the message that, oh, this is drudgery. Who wants to do a chore? We do enough chores in our life. But when you do family contributions, it sends the message that you are contributing. And that's one of the definitions of significance that we talked about earlier. I make a difference. I contribute in meaningful ways. And I get it. You don't like unloading the dishwasher or folding laundry or taking out the trash. But when you do those things, it makes a difference. Your work matters. And so it may just sound like words, but every time you say it, it sends that message. And to this day, when I call them family contributions, my kids will still roll their eyes, but I still do it.
Well, that makes me wonder, too. Here you are in the thick of raising your own kids, two teenage sons. How difficult is it in terms of outside pressure for you to be the parenting expert and for them to be the children of a parenting expert?
Well, it's so funny you say that. I always told my classes when my kids were younger, now I just want to be very upfront here. I'm going to see you one day at Walmart or Target, and my kids are going to be having an all-out tantrum on the floor. So just know that's going to happen. Well, first off, the term parenting expert, I think that's such a silly term anyway, because how can you ever be an expert in parenting? It's a work in progress. So I don't want my kids to feel undue pressure. I don't want to feel undue pressure, because all of us are learning. My training is in these tools and strategies that I know work, and I make mistakes along the way. So I'm not going to put any undue pressure on myself. The funny thing is when my kids throw the strategies back at me, my son will say, Mom, I think it's time for a good when then. Or so I can't pull anything over on them because they know all of the strategies, but that's okay.
But that's probably a good strategy to explain to our viewers. When then, when you unload the dishwasher, then explain how that works.
When then is one of the most fabulous strategies, and parents will honestly stop me in the grocery store and say, oh, I love the when then because it's so effective. It's great at diffusing power struggles. So instead of nagging and reminding your kids to do things, set up a when then routine. So it would sound like this: when your room is cleaned up, then you can enjoy your TV time.
And you're not the bad guy anymore.
That's right. When your homework is finished, and I've checked it, then we can leave for soccer. So you set the routine up so that the yucky stuff, the things that they don't really want to do all that much, has to be done before the more enjoyable parts of the day. And
stick to it. So if you say
Exactly.
we're not going to soccer until you do this, you have to stand by that.
you have to, otherwise don't even put it out there. So if my son comes bopping down the stairs at 4:45, and when it's time for us to leave to soccer and his family contributions aren't finished, I have to say, when your family contributions are done, then we'll leave for soccer. And that's tough because a lot of parents say, well, Amy, we've paid money for them to be on that team. The coach is expecting him. The teammates are expecting him. Well, guess what? That's a really important lesson. So if
And
you're
it's
late,
the natural consequences, you say, that will really teach the lesson. His teammates may say, we lost that game because you weren't here to be goalie.
that's right. And as parents, we're so afraid to be the slacker parent. We don't want to look bad. We don't want our kids to look bad. But that's exactly what we have to do to let them learn the lesson. Because imagine the learning that comes from calling the coach or showing up late and saying, I'm sorry that I was late. The reason was because I didn't have my family jobs done or I hadn't finished my homework. That's an important lesson.
You gave a presentation today at Penn State for the Penn State Forum, and I was kind of tickled to see so many men in the audience.
Yes.
But you held up a quote that I thought was interesting, and I'll probably butcher it a little bit, but it was, for every child who forgets, there's a parent who remembers.
Yes, you're very close on that. Yes.
And it reminds us that, how we kind of enable and create this vicious cycle that you were talking about.
Yes. So, whether it's remembering homework or PE clothes or the lunchbox or the coat, whatever it is, every time we remember for our kids, there's no need for them to remember. So a child who always forgets has a parent who always remembers. And so I advocate for repeat forgetting, not a one-time occurrence because we all make mistakes, but for repeat forgetting, it's time to implement the no rescue policy. And that's basically saying, you know what, you are really growing up and you're becoming so much more responsible in so many ways. And now it's time for you to be responsible to remember your soccer gear or your homework or lunchbox. So from now on, I'm not going to be reminding you. And if you do forget, you'll need to experience the consequences that go along with that.
And how important is it that parents are on the same page with this? Because one parent may not deliver the hat or the ski gloves, and they know that their child is going off to ski after school, and the other one will.
Yes. So that comes up all the time. So you really, when you're deciding that you're going to do a no rescue policy or using any of the strategies, it really does help when both parents can be on the same page. Now, sometimes they are just not, and you just have to deal with that. But if it's mom that happens to be with the kids most of the time, the kids will learn that these are mom's rules. Dad's rules may be different, but at least mom can have an influence with the strategies and the tools that she's using.
And words are important because you talk in your book about the difference between praising our child for doing something well and encouraging them. What's the difference? And give us a concrete example of how that works, why it makes a difference.
Praise would be kind of those flowery labels. You're so awesome, you're so smart. It's not very specific. The problem with that, and we talked about this a little bit today in the presentation, is when you say something like, you're so smart, that creates a label for the child to wear. And the research shows that when kids are praised for being smart, they become very concerned about protecting that smart label. And in the research studies, kids who were praised for being smart were less likely to take on more challenging tasks. They may be less likely to take a more challenging course, an AP or an honors course, because what if they don't get an A? Are they no longer smart? So we really advocate not praising, not doing the flowery, you're so awesome, you're so smart type of praise, and instead encourage, or praise helpfully is another way to describe it. So encourage hard work, perseverance. You know, you were really so thoughtful with your brother today when you did X. So make it very specific. Think about, is this something that my child could repeat in other areas? Those are the things that we want to encourage.
So instead of just congratulating them for the A, say that work really paid off.
Right. So we get all excited about A's on the report card, but what about that is important? The hard work, the extra study time, going the extra mile and going to a help class. Those are things that really make a difference and that they can repeat whether they're on the basketball court, in class, or at their first part-time job.
I was reading a little bit about Benjamin Spock in preparation for this interview, and it was kind of fascinating because when his first book came out, it sold 750,000 copies the first year. And that scared him a little bit because he felt this enormous responsibility and he feared a little bit that some of his information could be misunderstood.
Yes.
And then in reading about you, I saw people blogging saying that when they get into a situation, a power struggle, for example, with their child, they often think, what would Amy McCready do? And I'm wondering if you feel the pressure to get this right, and that there are a lot of people relying on your information.
Yes, I feel tremendous pressure, and it's funny in whether you're on the Today Show or it's a Facebook post, very often information today is given in little blurbs. You know, it's a little 4-minute segment on TV or it's a little Facebook post, and you can't really expand on it and explain all of the facets and what if this happens and what if that happens.
The
so
nuances.
that's exactly. So that's what I worry about. I think, oh, they're going to take this so literally, but I haven't had the opportunity to explain, well, if this happens, we should go in this direction. So I never feel like I can give a full enough picture for how the strategy should be used.
And of course, that's where the book comes in.
That's right.
All right. Amy McCready, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Amy McCready. Comcast subscribers can watch this program anytime on Penn State On Demand. Find out how through our website, conversations.psu.edu, where you'll also find an excerpt from McCready's book, If I Have to Tell You One More Time. I'm Patty Satalia. We hope you'll join us for our next Conversation from Penn State.
If you've enjoyed Conversations from Penn State and would like to purchase a DVD of this show or any of our other episodes, order online at mediasales.psu.edu or call 1-800-770-2111.
Production funding provided in part by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by viewers like you. Thank you.
This has been a production of WPSU.